All right, what's going on there, folks? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back here to another update here on this Thursday, January 4th, 2024. Thursday, about 12:03 p.m. here, California time. Latest activity shows 2.8 down into the South America region. Been watching some earthquake activity up here across Iceland in the past 24 hours or so, last couple days actually. Away from the Grindavik area, and the Icelandic Met Office finally put out a little informational statement on it for this earthquake activity that's been occurring near this region right here. Now, I have not have not even attempted to master that word right there, but you guys know what it is by looking on the screen. This is in an area outside the Grindavik region and away from the area. Now, if we were to go back, let me go back the last 24 hours here and show you guys the earthquake activity that's been kind of ramping up here lately away from this area. Here's the Grindavik area where the magma intrusion activity has taken place, and the recent fissure activity there back in the middle of December. This little area right here, now there is volcanoes here, obviously. It is in the continental rift zone, but it's currently sitting at a green. This area has seen a lot of earthquake activity, and some up in the 3 and 4 range as well. And I chatted about this last night, indicating how I believe this, well, yesterday, how I believe this was a regional stress out here, not related to magma, because we looked at some GPS stations out here and it showed no elevated inflation out there. Well, it looks like the Icelandic Met Office is in agreement with that that observation. They are talking about that 4.5 that occurred in this area, followed by another 3.9 and a series of aftershocks. Now, these earthquakes occurred at a depth of about 5 kilometers or so, and were likely triggered, were likely triggered in response to stress released from the Earth movement elsewhere on the Reykjanes Peninsula. So not associated with magma, but more or less due to the stress out there along the plates, or along that plate boundary, that rift zone. Of course, the earthquakes were felt in the southwest region of Iceland. There's a map of some of that activity there, but no new update in terms of the inflation, though, at Grindavik. They just kind of chatted about that earthquake activity away from Grindavik, but we're still kind of watching that. Overnight, let's go ahead and check out the last 24. Well, we'll go back to 12 here. I kind of like to keep it not so drawn out, but the area around Grindavik here, only about one earthquake, and that's here around the Hagafell area. So still not seeing any elevated earthquake activity, which would indicate almost, imminent eruption, similar to what we've seen there back in December. Still seeing earthquake activity here across the rift zone, but we now, in agreement here that this is basically stress activity out here against that rift zone. All right, zooming in out here to Hawaii. What do we got going on up here around Mauna Kea? Deep earthquake activity, not associated with the volcano here. 2.3, 30, and 3.1, it looks like, 32 kilometers deep below this area. And that's got to do with the hot spot here, the Hawaii Islands on the Pacific Plate, the stress itself with this activity that's going on here today, that earthquake activity. Down here on the southeastern area of the Big Island, still seeing earthquake activity, but no major swarms kicking up here, no major elevated movement across the Kilauea volcano. So let's go see what's going on here across the hazard notification system real quick. Here's their monthly update, daily update on Kilauea volcano. The volcano is still not erupting. Over the past day, seismicity has been low in the summit region, upper east rift zone and southwest rift zone. And that is due to obviously fluctuating input of magma into the area, but they still mention here that eruptive activity could occur in the near future with little or no warning. we continue to closely monitor the summit and both rift zones. No unusual activity has been noted along the middle and lower sections of Kilauea's East Rift Zone. Gas measurements downwind of this area have been below detection limits for SO2, indicating that the SO2 emissions from this area are there, but obviously below limits. So, looks like things are still at a standstill across the Hawaii volcano. Last night we did see some elevated inflation activity out here once again, but I do want to double check it myself and see how it looks today. And it looks like we're still going up and up and up. This is the inflation chart here, last 2 days. But you got to go out here to the 30-day map to kind of see the significance of all this here. I mean, it's been going up since the eruption back in September. That was, of course, confined. It was kind of a short-lived eruption there at the Lava Lake area. But this, if we go back since then, we would see this chart going up and up and up and stair-stepping. Obviously, that's an inflation sign below the summit area, near the summit area of magma. And today we are at the highest level, once again, higher than any other inflation event since 2018, since the 2018 eruption, which was a little bit more active, right? Away from the summit region into certain communities out there. So, still watching it. We're going up. Pretty sharp uptick here overnight. Again, earthquake activity relatively low, though. We're not really seeing anything major going on out here, but just know that inflation continues, and it will eventually have to stop, right? It's going to get to a breaking point, so to speak, out here. So we'll continue to watch that. A live look here at the Lava Lake area of Kilauea Volcano. That is not a hot spot. That is not a lava magma. This is a colorful lens flare that is overlooking the Lava Lake area. You can see some of that lens flare as well. As the sun goes up or moves across the sky, these move with it, and that's what those are, some lens flares out there. But no signs of any unusual activity besides the typical volcanic gases out there seeping through some of the tiniest cracks. All right, let's see what else we got going on here across the globe. Looks like we did see some further uptick here across Japan area. Let's see here. We got 4.2 up north, northern edge of the Japan Trench. 199 kilometers for that earthquake just after midnight. Let's see what this earthquake here is. Another deep quake. This is one of the more recent quakes here, 74 kilometers. So it looks like all this shallower earthquake activity is allowing for some more strain here across the region into the deeper areas of the Japan Trench. We do have one up here in the Kuro-Kamchatka as well that's from yesterday, late last night, pretty deep as well. Obviously, this movement here off the plate boundary, there's a couple other smaller fault systems that run through here. This isn't the exact, doesn't show the exact areas here. This one's a little bit more, let me see here if I can zoom in a little bit. Well, this is the Japan area. The earthquake of 7.5 struck right about here off of this continental oceanic convergent boundary. That's one that you did see on the USGS map. So there's subduction zones here in the blue cold front looking area. All up and down here as well. Japan Trench, Kuro-Kamchatka, Izu, Mariana Trench. All these are major subduction zones. And this area right about here, north of the Japan Trench, the Kuro-Kamchatka, has not seen any major, I'm talking about huge release of earthquake activity in quite some time. The 9-pointer that struck in 2011 there was on the Japan Trench here, roughly within this area. But I think we need to definitely watch this area of the Kuro-Kamchatka with this further deep activity that's being triggered here across the region. But definitely showing some activity today, a little bit on the uptick side. Some further adjustment going on at the surface levels as well, around that region of where that 7.5 struck here. A couple 4s triggering, but got to watch some signs, right? Watch for some signs along the areas of the plate boundaries here and also into the deeper regions. That gives us a good indicator of, as a whole, what's going on as a whole, so to speak. And this is a whole, so to speak, here, the Pacific Plate moving off to the northwest here. Some slip rates on average here about 83 mm, which is quite high. Down here around the Mariana Trench, potentially higher. And all that's backed up, reinforced by all these plates colliding into this area, so to speak. This one obviously subducting underneath this region. So it makes it easier, right, for this oceanic crust here to subduct underneath this North American plate. And that allows for some quicker strain to build up across this area compared to like California, where we have the two plates kind of sliding past each other. Subductions, of course, are much bigger than the typical faults out there in California. So here's some activity down into the Mariana Trench we were watching yesterday. It doesn't look like we've seen another shallow earthquake up north of 4.6, but it doesn't look like we've seen anything further within this region here. We had noted some deeper activity north and deeper activity south here. That was kind of a middle point in between those two deep earthquakes. And that showed some adjustment yesterday, but it doesn't look like we're seeing anything today yet. And that's on the USGS map. Same for the EMSC as well. It looks like, let me see here. That should be about 24 hours right there, right? All right, well, we'll keep it like that. I'll fix it here in a little bit. Java Trench area, still seeing some movement. Looks like a couple threes down here across the area. Pretty quiet up here around the Himalayas, but we've seen some activity here recently. But it is showing a fairly nice seismic gap zone for now. Deeper activities here into the Java Trench, adding some further strain upstream. Let's see what we got down here across New Zealand. Looks like a little bit of activity stirring up here, at least on the EMSC model. Looks like maybe a 3.4 and a 3.1. Let's go double check that, make sure, see if there's anything to chat about down there. 3.5 being reported southeast of Collingwood 4 hours or so ago. That's on the that's going to be very close to the plate boundary itself that kind of runs through here. Yesterday 3.1. A couple other earthquakes in there as well, so things look like they might be picking back up here across the New Zealand area. There's that 3.1 showing up pretty nicely here across the area of the Quartz Range region. Further south, a handful of smaller quakes, it looks like, as well. Nothing big, obviously nothing big brewing out here yet. I mean, I can't really say that because obviously things are building for some potential future large earthquakes, but right now, only a handful of smaller quakes across this area. All right, further up north here, one more earthquake, pretty deep into the Vanuatu area, 120 kilometers deep. That comes after a couple deeper quakes yesterday in this region. Most of the strain does transfer along this plate boundary as indicated here. General strain builds up in the deeper regions of the Tonga Trench here, and a lot of that strain builds in this area right here across the plate boundary. And that's exactly what we're seeing here over the last 24 hours. Further out into the South America region, 4.7 Peru. See what we got. Looks like some typical activity out here today. 4.1 coming in north here. Looks like maybe off the coast there of Costa Rica. 4.1. Some activity stirring up on the Middle America Trench as well, but that's all very typical up here across that area. Let's see what's going on here across the Caribbean plate around the Puerto Rico Trench. Do have some earthquake activity once again hitting this area. 3.6 right smack dab here on the Puerto Rico Trench, and some other earthquake activity out there in the vicinity. So looks like that may be kicking back up here. Gotta keep an eye on that. Normally this little plate here gets moved around quite a bit here when when the South American plate and the North American plate, and basically when everything moves around it, it kind of gets crunched here. It's right in the middle of these other plate systems out here. All right, yeah, there's the earthquake way up north of Iceland, way at the top of the globe, so to speak, 4.0. Let's see what we got going on here in the States real quick. Texas area, still seeing quite a bit of activity out here today in the oil fields. Goodness. Yellowstone National Park. There we go. That's what I was waiting on as well. It looks like they finally got to some of the earthquakes there from yesterday, and it kind of looks like we're still swarming today. So let's go check it out and see what's going on there at Yellowstone. Yeah, I'd say we're still swarming. It started off yesterday with a 3.1 earthquake, and since then, looks like died off a little overnight, but kicked back up this morning here. Still seeing some earthquake activity out here, so it looks like we may be in a start of maybe a lengthy swarm out here across Yellowstone. On the 1st here of January, right after, well, a few hours after that 7.5 that struck in Japan, we noticed a swarm as well kick up. Let's go back to that date, show you guys on the 1st, right here. The 7.5 signature is right up here. Yes, that's the earthquake in Japan showing up on the Yellowstone seismograph stations, along with the lengthy S waves and some aftershocks there as well. Maybe some 5s or 6s showing up in those little signatures. But a couple hours later, that's when we seen the Yellowstone supervolcano kick up for a couple hours there, and then it died off for a couple days, and that's where we're at right now, at a level of I'd say definitely some increased earthquake activity out here. And it does look like it is centered around the Mary Lake area, close to it. Let's see where we're at exactly. Go back to the most. I got so many windows open here. Goodness, I'm gonna close a few of these. Stand by here for a second. That was yesterday. Here's today. Does look like it's around the Mary Lake area. What is this reading right here? You guys see that? That is interesting looking. If I could see it somewhere else as well, that would lead me to believe that that's some type of deep magma movement going on there, but I am not seeing that signature, this signature right here. See that drawn out image right there? I'm not seeing it show up nearby, not even faintly, across any other seismograph stations out here. So that leads me to believe that that is just some type of outside interference local to the Mary Lake station. But if we've seen this type of signature all across Yellowstone, I'd be saying get ready. Something is definitely brewing out here, but it's not. I don't know what that is, whether it's a generator. Something looks like it turned on for a little bit, for an hour or so, strictly located around the Mary Lake area. But obviously earthquake activity, very visible across many of the seismograph stations, many of them, except for some of these ones that look like they are non-functionable. I mean, I don't know what they're doing with these. They used to work. They used to pick up earthquake activity, but looks like I don't know. They're just not set up right. Maybe nobody cares about them. But either way, earthquake activity visible across the majority of the seismograph stations here. A look at some of the reports here from the USGS with regards to today's activity and yesterday's. 56 earthquakes in a little swarm fashion here. Now, they do say 56, right? 56 earthquakes. Take, for example, here's today's seismograph station here. You think there's more than 56 on this image here? Not going to go and count them, right? But say, for example, if we just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, just in this little area of scattered earthquakes, there's 10. Imagine how many's in here. So there's probably a good, I don't know, probably over 100 earthquakes listed on this map here. All these little spikes here are earthquakes as well. These little spikes. So they're just counting, I think, a certain magnitude, or maybe they're picking and choosing which ones they want to, easily decipher in terms of the location and correct magnitude and depth. But yeah, there's a little bit more than 57. Largest magnitude, it looks like they upgraded that. It was a 3.1, got upgraded to a 3.3. We did see that show up yesterday on the seismograph stations there on the live stream. Most of these earthquakes obviously under that 2.2, 2.0, and a couple other smaller ones. But again, there's a lot more than what's showing here on the map. Now, if we go back to got to include the last couple days events as well from the first, right? That brings Yellowstone over 126 earthquakes. But again, similar to what they're doing today, they only included a handful of the events from Sunday. So there's definitely a lot more. Not Sunday, but was that Sunday? Well, the first was on Monday when they had that previous earthquake swarm. So there's probably definitely at least twice this amount showing on the screen. Either way, they're putting a handful of earthquakes out here, right? And the earthquake swarming is continuing. Seismograph stations here that monitor it, they'll probably show up here across the canyon and the Lake Yellowstone area as well. Looks like maybe a little spike of one coming in right now, or a few minutes ago. But all right, so we got an earthquake swarm in 2024. Not uncommon. I mean, these earthquake swarms do kick up from time to time. It's definitely nothing to worry about. We did check out the GPS stations here. I'll show you guys again real quick. If we were, people were worried about Yellowstone, we would be seeing this thing. Well, that's kind of older data right here. Here's 2024. This is pretty recent. And this is pretty close to the area that's seeing that swarm right now. If you look here on the chart, eastward movement, been taking a downturn, right, relative to the general plate motion of the North American plate, and this is taking a northward downtrend. This right here is up, vertical displacement. This is what you want to watch for when there's obviously a super volcano potential. Back in 2006, we did see that rise up pretty sharply, and then it dropped down, and then about 2014 or so, it came up a little bit more, and then it dropped back down. So is it possible we could be, it's hard to pinpoint when these things may pop back up, but with adjustment, obviously going on with the plates and everything below as well, things could stir this up again and potentially make it go back up. But right now, 2024, if you look here on this map, we're still fairly down there. There's no uptrend, and these are in 2-year intervals, it looks like, between each number. Here's our current data, still down there, no sharp, if we were looking at some upturn, we would see something like, well, that gets pretty big there. Something like this show up on the map with these little pink or purple dots, and we're not seeing it. It's fairly neutral here. If anything, it's more downward trend here in the last couple months. So nothing to worry about, no fear. I kind of like to point that out when I'm talking about Yellowstone. Obviously, is Yellowstone a threat to the world, mankind, so to speak? And yes, I mean, there's numerous videos out here, National Geographic, and all sorts of studies on Yellowstone and the potential effects of what could happen if a large-scale eruption does take place out here. But the signs are nowhere near where I would start to get worried. Earthquake activity, very common. And I'd like to look at these earthquake swarms because it is interesting to study, what's going on here across this Yellowstone supervolcano in the caldera area. It could be stress-related, could be fault-related. Most of these earthquakes occurring down there about 9 to 10, fairly deep. Some shallow, but definitely got some earthquake activity out there, right? So we'll continue to watch that. Up into the Washington area, a couple earthquakes from yesterday west of Mount Rainier. Nothing major going on. California, See what we got for 2.5 and above. One lonesome earthquake from yesterday. Looks like that's just off the southern branch here of the San Andreas Fault, 2.6. When you put on all the smaller microquakes, well, they're about the same as yesterday here. No elevated movement. Nothing of spectacular fashion in terms of swarming. Looks like a typical day out there in Southern California. All right, Alaska area. Again, about the same. Actually, this looks a little bit more quieter than normal. Only 2 earthquakes being reported up here, 3.5 and a 2.5. So we'll continue to watch things out here. A quick glance at space weather activity here by solarham.net. Watching a proton event kick up right now still. Some charged particles affecting the ionosphere area, mostly into the solar polar region here. We're getting a little bit up north here where the sun's centered over across the lit side of the Earth. Let's see what Kevin has to say. This is from yesterday, chatting about the low energy proton levels, how they're rising and producing some storming, but again, that's limited across the polar regions, it looks like. And that affects the HF signal transmissions up there, with a minor effect on them, it looks like. Okay, so we're looking at some flaring yesterday with that M flare, but since then things are just kind of popping here with some C flare activity. You see what's going on with 3536. That is the culprit of the recent X flare activity. Still does show some potential here of some stronger flaring. Notice this little area right here, very compact. Now we got this area picking back up a little bit, looks like. That's going to be venturing off to the western limb. So we got to watch these areas right here as they are in the focus of Earth. And do keep an eye on this area. A couple other regional sunspots up here do look like they are advancing as well. And a couple more sunspot regions coming around the bend. Right now, overall threat looks like 95% chance for a C flare, M flare at 40, X flare around 15% chance. And I noticed they've dropped these a little bit in terms of the potential for stronger flaring. But remember, this was like at 1% and 1% for, or 5% for an M flare when that X flare kicked off on January 1st. So it goes to show you, you can't really 100% predict when a flare is going to happen or how big it's going to be. So the forecast could call for something, but then the sun wants to do something bigger. Got to keep mankind on their toes. So continue to watch these regional sunspots here. Not seeing a whole lot of aurora potential in the coming days for now. Things look pretty quiet. Storm Prediction Center out here. In terms of weather on the ground, well, day 2 as we head into Friday, looks like a marginal risk for some severe weather with a 2% zone for tornado, 5% zone for wind. Not expecting much down here, but there is that little elevated threat limited to the Gulf Coast states here, and doesn't venture too far inland, basically right there across the coast. And definitely a lot of colder air coming in with potential of snow down to certain elevations. Well, certain states here, Oklahoma, Kansas, maybe even northern Texas as we head into early next week with some of that colder air coming in. That's going to bring some snow, rain, and whatnot to California and Pacific Northwest. These are definitely much colder storm systems coming in. And as we put this into motion here, well, it looks like that cold air is going to stick around for a good portion of January. So we'll have to watch this and see what happens. I mean, it's wintertime, so it should be cold, right? Look at that right there, around the 13th of January. That's a lot of snowfall, or a broad area at least of some snow coverage there in Texas. We'll have to see how that plays out. Either way, the cold air is coming. Get ready. Thermodynamics here. let's see what we got here. It's around the 15th or 6th. Look at that. You can see that cold air just dipping right out of the north. Oklahoma, Texas area going to be in all that cold. And it looks like after that, another advancement of cold air shooting down out of the north. Wintertime. That's a good sign of winter. Hopefully everyone's got a lot of firewood, and be nice and warm coming up here this month. All right, folks, I'm going to jump off here. Right now, seismograph stations look quiet. Not a whole lot going on there across the across those charts for now. Let's see what else is there. Anything major going on? That's about it. We'll catch you guys back here a little bit later on this evening, Thursday. Tomorrow's Friday. Woohoo! Have a good one, folks. Stay safe out there. Take care.